Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In this time, we are from third group. We would like to present about conversation implicature and cooperative principles. But before it, let me introduce our member. The first is Ade Dwi Cahyanti, second is Millatuz Zulfa, and I myself is Siti Nurhidayah. In this topic about cooperative and conversation implicator, there are some parts that will be explained more detail. The first part is conversational implicator. Second is the cooperative principle. The third is hedges and generalized conversational implicator. The next is scalar implicator. Then particularized conversational implicator. And the last is conventional implicators. Then, what is conversational implicator? According to Chris 1975, the term implicator accounts for what a speaker can imply, suggest or mean as distinct from what the speaker literally says. Implicator is one of the ways that one proposition can be conveyed by a speaker uttering or under appropriate. The importance of implicator seems to offer some significant functional explanation of linguistic work, and to effect substantial simplification in both the structure and the content of semantic description. Second, it provides some explicit account of how it is possible to mean more than what is actually said.
Okay, we continue the explanation. My name is Millatuz Zulfa. Here I would like to explain about cooperative principle. Conversation implicator is when in conversation that participants are adhering to the cooperative principle and the maxims. Speakers shape their utterances to be understood by the hearers. Chris suggested that in conversation, make your conversational contribution such as is required at the stage at which it occurs by the accepted purpose or direction or the talk exchange in which you are engaged. And he divided four maxims. The first is maxim of quality. The second is maxim of quantity. The third is maxim of relevance. And the last is maxim of manner. The first maxim is the maxim of quality, or tell the truth. There are some rules of this maxim. Firstly, do not say what you believe to be false. And the second is, do not say that for which you lack adequate evidence. Take a look to the example. There is a conversation between man and woman. The man said, "Is Mrs. Isi a professor?" And then the woman answered, "Yes, she is." From this example, the woman believed that Mrs. Isi is a professor and she has adequate evidence. So, we can conclude that this conversation follows the maxim of quality because the woman tells the truth. The second example. Here, someone said, John has 2 PhDs. From this statement, he believed that John has 2 PhDs and have adequate evidence. So, this sentence follows the cooperative principle. Let's go to the third example. Between old man and young man. How old you are? The old man said, I'm 15 years old. From this conversation, the assumption behind that question is the grandfather of the old man, 50 years old or more, but he answers 15 years old. And we can clearly see that the receiver has violated the maxim of quality by lying. Let's look at the other example. Here, there is conversation between mother and her son. The mother asks to her son, "Did you study all day long?" The son said, "Yes, I have been studying till now." In this exchange, the son is not truthful and he violates the maxim of quality. He is lying to avoid unpleasant consequences such as punishment or to be forced to study for the rest of the day. The second maxim is maxim of quantity. The rules of this maxim are say just as much as is necessary, and then make your contribution as informative as is required for the current purposes of the exchange, and do not make the contribution more or less informative than is required. To make it clear, let's see the example. This is the example between two people. Are you at the office? Yes, I am. You will see me at room 12 of Halle building. From this conversation, the participants of the conversation follow the maxim of quantity. Because the second people answer the question not less informative than is required. Let's see the second example. There is a conversation between mother and her daughter. How was your day at school? Fine. Here, the mother asked her daughter a question, and she expected her daughter to give her more details about her first day at school. But the daughter violates the maxim of quantity by giving her information less than required. And it can be follows the cooperative principle if the daughter explains some activities at school. Let's see to the other example. Here there is conversation between mother and her daughter. What did you have for lunch today? The mother said, I had chicken soup. For this example, it could be two interpretations. The conversation violated if the mother also had other kinds of foods and followed the cooperative principle if she only had the chicken soup. The third maxim is maxim of relation or relevance. Here, you should make your contributions relevant and stick to the point. There are some examples here, but let's take a look to the first example. What time is it? It is 3 p.m. Here, we can conclude that this conversation follows the maxim of relevance because the context is the man did not bring watch, so he asked to the woman. Let's see to the second example. Here, there is example between two people. The first man said, Can I borrow 10 euros? My wallet is in the bedroom. From this conversation, the second man is cooperative and provides a relevant answer. It means that the first man can borrow 10 euros from the first man. So, this example follows the maxim of relevance or relation. Let's see to the third example. There is a conversation between teacher and her student. Why didn't you do your homework? May I go to get some water? Because I'm so thirsty. From the conversation, the student's answer is not relevant to the teacher question. So, the student violates the maxim of relevance. The last maxim is maxim of manner. The maxim of manner is related to how something is being said in the conversation. This maxim as an explanation for a certain kind of regularity in conversational behavior with respect to the way information is provided at each turn of a conversation. And here, there are some rules of this maxim. The first is avoid obscurity of expression, avoid ambiguity, be brief, and be orderly. Let's see to the first example. Excuse me, can you tell us the way to the museum? It's this way. Go straight ahead at the traffic lights, turn right, go along the street, walk past the park, and keep going straight until you see the sign for the museum. This conversation follows the maxim of manner, because the man explained the direction orderly. The next example is the conversation that violates the maxim of manner. Look at the example. Do you know where my phone is? Your phone, do you know that using phone a lot can damage your brain? From this example, the woman violates the maxim of manner. The third example. This is the conversation between two girls. Did you enjoy the party last night? There was plenty of oriental food on the table, lots of flowers all over the place, people hanging around chatting with each other. From this example, the first girl asked very simple question. However, what she received from the second girl is a protective of what was going on at the party. Here, there are two interpretations can be made from the second girl's description. The first, she had such a good time in the party that she is obviously too excited and has no idea where to begin. Or the second one is she had such a terrible time and she does not know how to complain about it.
The next is hedges. When making a statement, certain expressions are used to indicate the degree of certainty concerning the information given. For example, as far as I know, they are getting married. The expression as far as I know is hedging for maxim of quality. Because maxim of quality, it should tell the truth. The second example. So, to cut a long story short, we grab our stuff and ran. The expression to cut a long story short is hedging for maxim of quantity. Because the speaker just say as much as is necessary. Next example is not to change the subject, but is this related to the budget? The expression not to change the subject is hedging for maxim of relevance, because maxim of relevance is stick to the point. The last example is, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but the car had no lights. The expression I'm not sure if this makes sense is hedging for maxim of manner, because maxim of manner should be avoid obscurity.
Next, let's talk about generalized implicature. Let me tell you about the definition of generalized implicature. Generalized implicature is a conversational implicature that is inferable without reference to a special context. Here, there is no special knowledge is required to figure out the additional meaning. In short, means that generalized conversational implicature is one which doesn't depend on particular features of the context, but is instead typically associated with the proposition expressed. There is an example of generalized implicature in conversation. Do you send message to Ida and Ani? I send message to Ida. Based on the example, there is no special knowledge is required in the context of conversation. After we learn about generalized implicature, let's learn about scalar implicature. What is scalar implicature? What is the example? Here, certain information is always communicated by choosing a word which expresses one value from a scale of value. Also, the basic of scalar implicature is that when any form in a scale is asserted, the negative of all forms higher on the scale is implicated. Furthermore, scalar implicator is a particularly obvious use in terms for expressing quantity. There is an example of scalar implicator. I ate some of the cake. Based on the example, the sentence implies that I didn't eat all of the cake. Next material is particularized implicator. When this implicator occurs, a particularized conversational implicator occurs when a conversation takes place in a very specific context, in which locally recognized inferences are assumed. Let's see the example. There is an example in dialogue when someone is looking for a book. Where is my book? Your young sister is drawing something. From this example, the action draw of your young sister would ordinarily not convey anything about her book. So implicator in this case depends on the context. The last material is conventional implicator. Conventional implicator is not based on the cooperative principle or maxims. Conventional implicator is not have to occur in conversation. Next, conventional implicator is not depend on special context for the interpretation. Conventional implicator also is associated with specific words and results in additional conveyed meanings when those words are used. Some words are expressions for conventional implicator. The word but, A but B, will be based on the relationship between A and B and an implicator of contrast between the information in A and B. For example, Mary is crying, but she is happy. Mary is crying in here is contrast to she is happy. Another word of conventional implicator is even. Even is used in contrary to expectation. For example, David even helped the old woman to go home. David is not expected to help the old woman, but he did. The last word of conventional implicator is yet. Yet here, as the present situation is expected to be different, perhaps the opposite at a later time. For example, Mila is not here yet. Negation of this sentence is Mila is here. So, Mila is here is expected to be true later.
From the explanation of Chris' theory about cooperative principles and conversation implicator, we can conclude that we always use the cooperative principle when we talk. At the same time, we always violate the maxims. But still the message that we want to convey is being understood for the most case. And indeed, Chris' cooperative principle could be seen as a great contribution in suggesting an effective principle.